Okay, so we shall start with a new chapter today in your syllabus, that is drugs acting on GIT. So under that, the first topic is emetics. Coming to the outline of the chapter, we are going to cover the definition of emetics. Then in brief we shall see what exactly this emesis response is, how it is generated, what are the different mechanisms involved over there which can evoke the emesis. Okay, so that we come to know the targets of different anti-emetic drugs over here in this particular point which we are going to cover today. Next part is the classification of the drugs which are used as emetics. Then individual drugs, that is apomorphine and ipecacuanha. The last point, which is also important, that is contraindications to the use of emetics. What are the situations in which the emetics are not supposed to be utilized? Coming to the definition of emetics. So emetics are the drugs which are used to evoke the vomiting. Okay, now vomiting is an unpleasant sensation. So why do you need to induce this vomiting, okay, or evoke the vomiting? So there are certain situations in which vomiting needs to be induced. Say for example, if poisoning has taken place, okay, or toxicity of some drug has taken place. So in that case you may have to remove the content which is present in your stomach. So for that purpose you may need to induce the vomiting in that particular person. Okay, so definition is the drugs which are used to evoke the vomiting. Now coming to the next part, that is emesis. So we shall see what are the different mechanisms by which this emesis is evoked. Okay, now basically emesis or vomiting, it occurs due to the stimulation of vomiting center, or it is also known as emetic center, which is located in the medulla oblongata. Now this vomiting center, it can be stimulated by multiple pathways. Okay, so vomiting can be elicited or evoked or induced by multiple pathways. Now there are basically these two areas, that is CTZ and NTS, which are involved, okay, in the relay of that vomiting sensation. Okay, CTZ you all must be aware of, it is chemoreceptor trigger zone, okay, which is located in the area postrema and nucleus tractus solitarius. So these are the two important areas, relay areas for the efferent impulses, okay, the impulses which carry that vomiting sensation towards the CNS. So these are the very important sites in your CNS which carry these impulses, which may be evoked from either your GIT or maybe throat or maybe some other viscera, maybe vestibular apparatus. So at several areas this vomiting impulse may be generated. So it will be carried to these main two areas which are responsible for the transmission of that impulse. Okay, so these, out of this, even the CTZ, it is also accessible to the blood-borne drugs, that is drugs which are present in your blood. They gain access to this CTZ. We have already covered earlier that CTZ, it is not protected by the blood-brain barrier. So any drug which is present in your blood, or maybe any other mediator which is present in your body, which may be circulating, or certain hormones, or maybe certain toxins, so these may get easy access to the CTZ as it is unprotected by the blood-brain barrier. You all are aware that your CNS is protected, or your brain is protected by the blood-brain barrier, that is tightly placed, the capillary endothelial cells, that is the blood vessels which are supplying to your brain. The endothelial cells, they are held together tightly, closely. Usually the endothelial cells present in your blood cells, they have a gap, but over here they are held together so tightly that any substance which is present in your blood cannot easily cross the capillary wall and reach your brain. Only highly lipid soluble drugs can cross the blood-brain barrier to reach your CNS. Okay, but in this case CTZ, it is not protected by the blood-brain barrier. So any substance which is present in your blood can easily gain the access to the CTZ, and if it is a stimulant one, it will stimulate and induce the vomiting. We have seen that several drugs, they have nausea and vomiting as a side effect. That's because they can gain access to the CTZ very easily. Now apart from this, certain cytotoxic drugs, okay, that is the ones which are used for chemotherapy or radiation therapy is used, or certain other GI irritants. Basically how they act is, they act by releasing the 5-HT from the enterochromaffin cells. So 5-HT we have already covered, it's a type of autocoid, it is 5-hydroxytryptamine, or it is also known as serotonin. So it is basically released in your GI tract. Okay, so this 5-HT will act on the 5-HT3 receptors. Okay, we have seen the location of 5-HT also. It is majorly found in the GIT, or it's released in the GIT. Okay, most of the 5-HT which is present in your body. So whatever 5-HT is released as a result of stimulus from all these, that is maybe cytotoxic drug or radiations or GI irritants, so they will cause a massive release of 5-HT. This will in turn act on the 5-HT3 receptors, 5-HT3 subtype of receptors it will act on, okay, which are present in the extrinsic primary efferent neurons of the enteric nervous system. You all have already studied what enteric nervous system is in your anatomy, physiology and pathophysiology. Okay, we will not go much into it. Okay, so it will, whatever 5-HT is released, it will stimulate the receptors which are found in this primary efferent neurons of the enteric nervous system. So these in turn, these nervous system which is stimulated, in turn it will connect with the vagal and spinal visceral efferents, which are sending impulses in turn to the NTS and the CTZ. So this is how the impulses from your GIT, this may reach the main two areas which are responsible for the what to say, the generation of that emasses. Okay, so that is NTS and the CTZ. So this is how they are stimulated. Apart from that, if in the GIT very large quantities of 5-HT is released, so this may leak into your circulation, and through your blood circulation also it can directly reach the CTZ. Rather than stimulating all these nerves directly, 5-HT may also reach your CTZ. There are 5-HT3 receptors located in the CTZ also. So over there it will stimulate the 5-HT receptors and result in the stimulation of the CTZ, and that's how it will produce the vomiting sensation. Apart from being released from the GIT, 5-HT may also be produced largely by the platelets, so it may be released from the platelets also through the action of the inflammatory mediators. So certain inflammatory mediators which are released, it may act on platelets to release more and more 5-HT, which in turn may stimulate the vomiting center. Okay. However, one thing should be kept in mind, that 5-HT is not the only mediator, okay, which can evoke the vomiting sensation. Apart from this, there are several other mediators which can induce vomiting sensation. Okay, now let us see what are the different types of receptors which are involved in the CTZ and the NTS, which are actually responsible for the vomiting sensation. So as I've told you, it's not only the 5-HT3, okay, or not only the serotonin, but there are several other mediators which can induce the vomiting sensation. Okay, so if you can have a look at the types of receptors which are located in these centers, in these two areas, you will come to know what type of drugs can induce the vomiting. Okay, so if you can see the histaminergic H1 receptor, we have already covered all these types of receptors. Okay, so under histamine we have seen that histamine receptors H1, H2, H3. Okay, so out of that, H1 receptor is located in CTZ and NTS. Dopaminergic D2 receptor is also found. Okay, so that's the reason why drugs which are acting on the D2 receptors as an agonist, they have a side effect of producing the nausea and vomiting. Apart from that, 5-HT3 receptors are also located in these areas. So any 5-HT which can leak into your blood circulation and reach these areas, that can also induce the vomiting sensation. Apart from that, cholinergic M, that is muscarinic receptor. Cholinergic receptors are of two types, muscarinic and nicotinic. So out of that, muscarinic receptors are located in the CTZ and NTS. Then neurokinin NK1 receptors. This receptor is actually activated by substance P. Okay, so this is also located in these two areas. Apart from that, opioid mu receptors. Opioid receptors also we have covered, mu, delta, kappa. So out of that, mu receptors are located in these two centers. So any drug or any substance or any toxin which can act and stimulate any one of these receptors will evoke vomiting sensation. Okay, so from this you can have an idea of the several targets for the antiemetic drugs. Okay, so antiemetic drugs will be those which will be used to abolish the vomiting sensation or prevent the vomiting sensation. Okay, actually once vomiting is started, it cannot be controlled very easily. Okay, so antiemetic drugs have to be given in advance. Like say for example, in case if you are traveling, you take some people have the problem, right, of motion sickness. It is called as motion sickness, vomiting which is associated with the traveling. Okay, so some people face that problem. So in that case, antiemetic drugs have to be taken before the start of journey. Okay, so usually antiemetic drugs have to be taken before, maybe the start of journey, to prevent it. So several targets you can come to know over here. Antiemetic drugs, they have the antiemetic property. Okay, antihistaminic. The drugs which can block the D2 receptors, or anti-5-HT drugs, or anti-muscarinic drugs. Okay, or the drugs which can block this NK1 receptors. Okay, so all these receptors, when blocked, they can evoke or they can prevent the vomiting sensation, or antiemetic action can be produced. So from this you will have an idea. All this will be repeated in the chapter antiemetic drugs. Okay, which will be in the next chapter which we are going to start. Okay, so just keep in mind these are the different types of receptors located in these two areas: H1, D2, 5-HT3, M, that is muscarinic, and NK1 and mu receptor. So all the antagonists at these receptors will be acting as antiemetic drugs. Okay. Now apart from these stimulation of the receptors, there are certain situations in which the vestibular apparatus may be disturbed, or certain disturbances may be produced over here. Certain impulses may be generated from the vestibular apparatus also. So why it takes place is whenever there is disturbance in the equilibrium. Okay, say for example, if you are traveling in a guard section, okay, or suppose if your body is rotated or twisted and turned, like say for example, if you are going to some amusement parks, so over there are some roller coasters and something like that. So your body will get rotated and your equilibrium is disturbed. So this may result in generation of the vestibular impulse from the vestibular apparatus. Apart from that, certain ototoxic drug, that is drug which may cause toxicity to your ear. Okay, those are known as ototoxic drug. You all must have studied under antibiotics that certain drugs are ototoxic. Okay, so such drug may generate the impulses from this vestibular apparatus, which may reach up to these areas, CTZ or NTS, and evoke the vomiting sensation. Okay. So these two, that is ototoxic drugs and disturbance of the vestibular apparatus due to the rotation and the disturbance of the equilibrium, these are basically mediated through muscarinic and H1 receptors. So generally the anti-muscarinic drugs and antihistaminic drugs are usually used for this situation. Okay, to prevent the vomiting which is associated with ototoxic drug or any kind of disturbance in the equilibrium due to motion. So anti-motion sickness drugs are usually those which will block these receptors. Okay, muscarinic receptor or H1 antihistaminics. Okay, so these are the drugs which are usually used to control the vomiting which is associated due to disturbance in the equilibrium, wherein the impulse is generated from the vestibular apparatus, or the vomiting which is associated with the ototoxic drug. Okay, now these are the different mechanisms by which the vomiting may be induced. Okay, so apart from this, okay, so these are the basic mechanisms. So apart from this, there are several unpleasant sensory stimuli which may also evoke vomiting sensation. Like say for example, you smell a bad odor which is very bad, okay, or ghastly sight. So you look at something which very unpleasant, okay, or if you are in severe pain or fear, or maybe say recall of some obnoxious event, okay, or anticipation of emetic stimulus, say for example, if you even look at a person who is vomiting, you will also feel that nauseated, you will also have that nauseated feeling, or so that is known as anticipation. Okay, so you feel like vomiting. So all these situations are also responsible for the evoking of the vomiting sensation. Okay, now when the nausea, vomiting occurs, it's usually accompanied by reduced gastric tone and peristalsis. Usually your gastric tone, okay, or peristalsis is responsible for movement of the substance in the forward direction. Okay, that is from the mouth to the esophagus to your stomach. Okay, and from there it will go into the small intestine. Okay, so usually this is the direction, so which is maintained by the gastric tone and the peristalsis. Okay, so whenever nausea or vomiting sensation is evoked, it is usually accompanied by reduced gastric tone and peristalsis. So whatever movement of your food content or whatever your digestive substances takes place, so that will be reduced. Okay, now whenever an emetic response is generated, the certain parts of your GIT, they will relax, and certain parts of the GIT will contract in such a way that the content of your stomach will come out through the mouth. Okay, so now usually this is the procedure of swallowing. Whenever you swallow something, it will go into your esophagus, and this is the way the movement of your food content will take place, right? There are circular muscles, there are longitudinal muscles, so they contract in such a way that the bolus, whatever food content is there, it will be pushed forward towards your stomach. From here it will go into your small intestine, from there it will go into the large intestine. So this is what is the normally movement of your food material takes place, right? This is another picture which is showing the details of your stomach. Esophagus, from esophagus, stomach, which is guarded by the lower esophageal sphincter. Okay, so it is relaxed whenever any food content is entering your stomach. The lower esophageal sphincter, it is relaxed, so that the food content will enter into your stomach. Okay, and the various parts of stomach also we have covered: cardia, fundus, this portion is the fundus, this portion is the body, and this portion, last portion, is your pylorus. Okay, now usually whenever an emetic response is evoked, the fundus and body of the stomach, that is this part, the fundus and the body is this part of your stomach. Okay, then the esophageal sphincter, okay, that is this one, lower esophageal sphincter and upper esophageal sphincter, and the esophagus, all of these will relax, whereas the duodenum, okay, that is this one, the next part after the stomach, that is first part of your small intestine, the duodenum, and the pyloric stomach, that is, this is the pylorus, this end of your stomach, lower end of your stomach. So both these portions will contract in a retrograde manner. Retrograde meaning in the reverse direction. Usually this pylorus and your duodenum contracts in such a way that the food content which is present in your stomach, it will move further. From duodenum it will go towards the next part of your small intestine, that is jejunum. Okay, usually that's what is the process, normal process. But whenever an emetic response is evoked, all the upper portions will be relaxed and the lower portions, that is pyloric end of your stomach and the duodenum, both will contract, and they will contract in such a way that the content from your duodenum will move backwards. Usually it goes in this direction, but in this situation, that is in the emetic response, the content from your duodenum will move back into your stomach. All these portions are relaxed, so the contents will move further. Even the peristalsis is reduced, so all the flow will be in the reverse direction. And along with this, rhythmic contractions of your diaphragm is placed over here, right? Diaphragm is actually a skeletal muscle, a respiratory muscle. So that will contract. Abdominal muscles which are present, they will also contract and compress the stomach in such a way that all the content of your stomach will be evacuated out through the mouth. So this is how vomiting sensation is produced. Okay, we have seen the mechanism, and we have also seen actually what is the physiology which is responsible for the vomiting sensation. Okay, apart from this, even if there is inhibition of the gastric emptying is a time taken for your food content to move from stomach into the small intestine. So if there is any condition which is inhibiting or reducing the gastric emptying, if the food content is not moving from the stomach into the small intestine, this will predispose to the vomiting sensation. So food content will remain over here in your stomach for a larger period of time. Okay, further movement will be stopped, indigestion will take place, and vomiting sensation may be evoked. Okay, so this is the basic mechanism how the vomiting is induced. Now coming to the drugs which are used as emetics. So classification, there are only two classes depending upon how it acts. Okay, so first class is including the drugs which act on the CTZ. Okay, so that is apomorphine is the example. So apomorphine will act on the CTZ and it will evoke the vomiting sensation. The next class is having a different mechanism. Okay, if you can see that this drug ipecacuanha, which is the example of this class, it acts reflexly and on the CTZ. Okay, so it will irritate the gastric mucosa as well as it will act on the CTZ. So both the mechanisms are followed over here. So depending upon the mechanism, the two drugs are classified separately. Okay, now as I have already told you earlier, vomiting, it needs to be induced only when an undesirable substance or a poison or a toxicity of the drug has taken place. You need to induce the vomiting. This you all must have already studied under the treatment of certain toxicities or poisoning of certain drugs. Vomiting may be induced to remove the content of your stomach. Sometimes gastric lavage is done. That is something different. That is stomach wash. You insert an intubation and you introduce certain liquid content into your stomach. It varies depending upon the type of poison, and then you remove the content of your stomach. So that method is something different. That is known as stomach wash. And here you are inducing the vomiting by using certain drugs, so that whatever content is present in your stomach, it will come out through the mouth. Okay, so usually vomiting is not a pleasant sensation. You may not have to induce vomiting, or it is not used for any therapeutic purpose. Rather, it is having toxicological importance. You need to induce vomiting only when there is some kind of poisoning which has taken place or toxicity of drug has taken place. Now usually in case of emergency situation, powdered mustard suspension may be used. Okay, mustard is easily available in your house, right? Usually people don't keep the drugs which can induce the vomiting in the house, right? So commonly it is not kept. Just like your paracetamol is available in each and every house, but nobody will keep apomorphine or ipecac in the house. Okay, so it is occasionally required. So in an emergency situation, what you can do is you can utilize the mustard. Mustard is easily available in the house. Okay, so the mustard is powdered, and that powdered mustard is mixed with water. That suspension is administered to the patient. or even strong salt solution will also help. A very much concentrated salt solution, salt is also easily available in each and every house. Okay, even if you all must have experienced this, if you consume excessive amount of salt, you will have the nauseated feeling. Okay, excessive amount of salt you will not be able to consume. Okay, so strong salt solution can also induce the vomiting sensation. So these are the two measures which can be utilized in case of emergency, which are easily available in any household situation. Okay, so both of them, they act reflexly by irritating the stomach. So stomach mucosa is irritated, and that's how they generate the impulse which is carried to the vomiting sensation, and the vomiting is induced. Okay, now coming to the individual drug, the first one is apomorphine. Okay, so this is the drug which basically act through the CTZ. It's actually a semi-synthetic derivative of morphine and acts on the dopaminergic receptors. So D2 receptors are located in the CTZ, we have seen. Okay, so it acts by stimulating the D2 receptor. It is a dopaminergic agonist. So it will act on the D2 receptor, stimulate them, and that's how it is stimulating the CTZ and producing the vomiting sensation. Okay, now usually this drug is administered by the IM or subcutaneous route. Okay, that is, it is supposed to be administered by parenteral route. So in a dose of 6 milligram, this drug will act within 5 minutes. So within 5 minutes, it will induce the vomiting sensation. However, one precaution has to be taken in this case is that if there is respiratory depression in that particular patient, you are not supposed to use apomorphine in the presence of respiratory depression, because itself apomorphine can also induce respiratory as well as CNS depression. Okay, so it's a respiratory and CNS depressant drug. So that is the reason why, if already the respiratory depression is present in the patient, you are not supposed to go for apomorphine. Okay, also the oral use of apomorphine is also not recommended, because the dose which is required to produce the emesis, that is very large. It has to be administered in very large quantity. Also it is slow to act. Okay, and rather the action is also inconsistent. Okay, so it is not a reliable drug when it is used by oral route, whereas if you use by parenteral routes, it can induce the vomiting within 5 minutes. Then next drug is ipecacuanha. It's a naturally obtained substance obtained from Syphilis ipecacuanha. This is the source. So it contains imatin, which is actually responsible for the emesis. Okay, that's how the name has been obtained by that particular constituent present in this Syphilis ipecacuanha. Okay, so it is available in the form of syrup ipecac, and these are the doses. In case of adults, 15 to 30 ml is required. In case of children, 10 to 15 ml, and in case of small infants, 5 ml of the syrup ipecac is required to induce the vomiting. Okay, so as it is used in the form of syrup, so it has to be used by the oral route. Okay, so it is used by oral route. The disadvantage with this particular drug is that it is less dependable as compared to parenteral apomorphine. We have seen that parenterally administered apomorphine will act within 5 minutes, whereas this drug will take around about 15 minutes or even more than that to show its action, that is to induce the vomiting. Okay, so it's not a drug of emergency. In case of emergency, you are supposed to prefer the apomorphine, but it is always safer as compared to apomorphine. And mechanism, it is both by irritating the gastric mucosa as well as it can act on the CTZ to stimulate the CTZ. So both mechanisms are applicable to ipecacuanha. The last portion is the contraindications to the use of emetics. Now this is very important. It is usually asked in the papers, the contraindications to the use of emetics. Okay, that is, which are the situations in which the emetics, all the emetics are contraindicated, whatever it is. Okay, may it be your household measure, that is mustard suspension or salt, maybe apomorphine or ipecacuanha. So all these emetics are contraindicated in all these situations. So these are very important. Okay, sometimes justification may also be asked. Okay, with this. Now coming to the first point, the first situation in which the emetics are contraindicated. So that is poisoning due to corrosive substances. Like say for example, acid or alkali poisoning has taken place. Any of the acid or alkali which all have used in the laboratories. So in case if the poisoning has taken place with acid or alkali, mostly the poisoning takes place because of the suicidal tendency. People tend to consume these maybe corrosive substances or kerosene or maybe some poison they consume in order to commit the suicide. So in that situations maybe you need to identify what is the poison first and then only go for the emesis. Okay, so in case if the poisoning has taken place with any of the corrosive substances like acid or alkali, you are not supposed to induce the vomiting by using these emetics. Now why you are not supposed to induce the emesis is because whatever acid or alkali is present in the stomach, obviously it will come out, right? Okay, when you induce the vomiting. So there is a risk of perforation and damage to the esophageal mucosa. Okay, so usually your stomach layer, it is protected with the help of mucus layer. Okay, but such protective layer is not present in the esophagus. That's what you all have studied. Okay, there is no protective layer. So in that case there is a risk of perforation, damage to the mucosa may also take place. Okay, next situation in which the emetics are contraindicated is the CNS stimulant drug poisoning. Okay, so in case of any of the CNS stimulant drug poisoning has taken place, if you try to induce vomiting by using emetic drugs in this situation, it will result in precipitation of the convulsions. Okay, already we have seen that CNS stimulants, most of the CNS stimulants in the toxic doses, they themselves can induce the convulsions. Okay, so if you try to induce emesis in such situations, it will in turn precipitate the convulsions in such individuals. So it is supposed to be contraindicated in the CNS stimulant drug poisoning. Next contraindication is kerosene poisoning or petroleum poisoning. Just now I told you that some people may consume kerosene in order to commit suicide. Okay, some people do that. So in this situation also vomiting is not supposed to be induced because there are chances of aspiration of these kerosene or petroleum into your lungs. Aspiration meaning when vomiting is induced, while the content is coming out of your stomach, it may accidentally enter into your respiratory tract, into your trachea, your bronchi, bronchial. So it may enter into your lungs. So if it aspirates, that situation is known as aspiration of the content of your stomach. So in case if it aspirates, it can result in pneumonia. Okay, so that can be dangerous again. Okay, further complications will be produced. So next contraindication is unconscious patient. Okay, so if a patient is unconscious, you are not supposed to induce the vomiting in this situation because the person is not in the conscious. So that content which is coming out, it may aspirate back again into your lungs. Okay, because the swallowing response and all, it is not present in the unconscious patient. The person may not be able to coordinate where exactly those content are going. Okay, so aspiration chances are there, then again complications might take place. So vomiting should not be induced in the unconscious patients as well. Next contraindication is morphine or phenothiazine poisoning. This point we have already covered under opioid analgesics also. When we have covered the morphine, we have seen that in case of morphine poisoning, vomiting is not supposed to be induced. Emetics are ineffective. Actually, in therapeutic doses, morphine itself can induce vomiting sensation, nausea and vomiting. It can stimulate the CTZ and induce the nausea and vomiting. That's what we have seen. But in case of toxicity, that is in case of higher doses of morphine, it can depress the vomiting center, it can depress the CTZ. That's what we have seen. So emetics are ineffective in case of morphine poisoning as well as in case of phenothiazine poisoning. Okay, so these are all the contraindications to the use of ematics. The situations in which the ematics are not supposed to be utilized, or they are ineffective in certain situations. So this is very important from exam point of view. 2 marks questions can be asked on this itself. Okay, so this finishes the chapter. Important questions pertaining to this chapter are: a note on ematics may be asked, wherein you have to discuss all entire chapter. Okay, or contraindications of ematics. These are also very important from exam point of view.